But the next project that you will be seeing, I do have a really fun project in mind, and I've actually already started making the video for it and working on that project, so hopefully you'll be seeing that soon. Upload schedule, never heard of her. I did warn you. Hello! So today I'm gonna be trying to piece together a coherent video from footage I took 6 months ago. Rochelle is bad at YouTube, nobody is surprised. Alright, so in May this year, a friend and I went to Bath, and I decided for this trip that I really wanted to like embrace cottagecore, like go full out, because it's always fun when you're on holiday to kind of try something new with your wardrobe, because you're gonna mostly encounter strangers who are not gonna judge you. Well, they might judge you, but they won't say it because they're polite, hopefully. Anyway, yeah, and you know, Bath is like gorgeous old buildings and green countryside, so it just felt fitting. So to that end, I made 2 skirts and 2 bodices for this trip. So this video is gonna be part 1, where I walk you through how I made some really simple skirts, and hopefully in a few weeks I will have the bodice video done too. Is my camera crooked? Hold on. It was crooked. Good, that's great. That's the whole intro crooked then. You know what? I'm just gonna leave it because this video is chaotic anyway. Coffee. I need coffee. Lord, did you miss me? Because, oh my god. The chaos. So I knew that I wanted to make some very fabulously swooshy skirts, and normally I would just do a circle skirt and call it a day, but circle skirts do use up a lot of fabric. So basically I decided to draft just a really simple skirt with 6 panels that would efficiently use the fabric while essentially giving the same effect as a full circle skirt, because you've still got all that volume at the hem. I tend to not like gathered skirts very much. Gathered skirts are a really good use of the fabric because you can just cut rectangles as opposed to having to cut like curved pieces, which don't use the fabric as efficiently, but I just don't like the way they look on me. So this was my solution. So speaking of use of fabric, let's talk about the materials for this project. Now normally I would do a cost breakdown at this point, but there's actually not much to break down for this project. I used 2 cotton duvet covers that I had picked up from a charity shop for I think they were £5 each. It might have been more or less. It was a very long time ago now because I started this project in May and I got the fabrics before that and I do not remember anything. But yeah, I know that they were fairly cheap, and if you've been watching a while, you know that I am cheap and I make a lot of things out of bed sheets. So yeah, it was kind of perfect. So I ended up getting a white one and a beige plaid one, and I think they were about £5 each. And other than that, for materials, I just needed thread and invisible zippers and my sewing machine, all of which I already had. And of course the pattern I self-drafted, and I already had some paper handy. So overall, I think this is probably one of the cheapest projects I've ever made. It was very good. So now that that's all out of the way, let's get to sewing, or in this case, drafting. So to start with, we're gonna need some measurements. So I decided to include 1-inch seam allowance on the pattern because I was going to French seam all of the skirt panels, and it was just to make my life easier, we sewed at ½ an inch. And then the bottom of the pattern needed 1.5 inches added for the hem allowance. I'm gonna do a 1-inch hem on that one. And the top needed ½ an inch for the waistband to be sewn on. So all of that you have to keep in mind as you're drafting it. I normally make my skirts at calf length, so I measured down from my waist to my calf, and that's the first measurement you're gonna need. And then I needed to figure out how wide my panels could be. So I could just do the math for a big circle at this point and cut it into 6, but that's not a super efficient use of fabric because you would have these really wide wedges, depending on like how big the hem of your circle is. So instead I decided to take a measurement based on the width of my fabric. So I folded my duvet cover as efficiently as I could into 6 layers. The width of that would be the bottom of the pattern, essentially. So remember to account for your seam allowance though, because I needed to subtract 2 inches from this measurement to get the net number, because you need 1 inch on either side for that seam allowance. So I drafted the pattern net to begin with, and then I added the seam allowance on at the end, but it's still something to keep in mind just so you have room on your paper. So I started by drafting an axis on my paper. The horizontal axis is that number we just found, the widest part of the panel, and you're gonna mark the midpoint of that part. And then the vertical axis is the waist to calf measurement that we found earlier, and then 1.5 inches on the bottom and then ½ an inch on the top, hem and waistband. And if you're smart, you will also add the radius of the waist circle to this so that you're not drafting half off the paper, but I am not smart, so I did not do that. I would do that, it's useful. So now we need to find the radius to draft the waist curve. Again, this would have been better to do earlier, but if you've drafted a circle skirt before, you've done this bit before. So we are measuring our waist, and that's the circumference of a circle, and then you find the radius on that I'm sure you've done high school math, so you know how to do this. Except instead of drawing the whole circle, we're gonna draw 1/6 of a circle since I'm making 6 panels. So take your waist measurement, find the radius needed, and then I used a piece of string to draft that curve. And I didn't film this because I was using an app on my phone as a protractor. If you have a protractor, I would very much recommend it because you need the curve to be 60 degrees. That's how you know that it's 1/6 of the circle. And if you've done it correctly, then the curve that you've just drawn, that will be 1/6 of your waist measurement. So then working down from that curve, I marked the length of the skirt, waist to calf. And then I tied a bit of string to something heavy, and I used that to connect the dots I marked for the width of that panel, and I drafted a nice smooth curve to the bottom of the skirt. And then we add seam allowance all around, and now we can cut it out. And I folded it in half lengthwise to just make sure that I was getting a nice symmetrical panel. And then quickly drafted a 1-inch waistband with seam allowance included. Well, look everyone, I'm pressing my fabric. Let it be known, Rochelle presses her fabric. Sometimes. You know what? I'm gonna give myself a point for pressing my fabric because I don't always do it. So I cut out the waistband and 6 panels, fabric doubled obviously. And of course we mustn't forget the pocket pieces. I decided for this one I'm just gonna do 1 side pocket and a side zipper because I didn't want a weird zipper because it's 3 panels on the front and 3 panels on the back. And so a back zipper would not have been in the center back and that would have really annoyed me. So side zipper and 1 pocket. I've not found that I needed more than 1 giant pocket in this skirt. It was fine. I like more pockets, but I will take 1 giant one. Oh, quick side note. So when I cut out the pieces, I made sure to lay 1 edge of the pattern on the straight grain. And so when I pinned the panels together, I pinned a straight edge to a bias edge to help stabilize all the seams so that they wouldn't stretch out as much. I still got like a little bit of stretching, but much less than if I'd attached bias to bias. So that's a good way to cut out a paneled skirt, I think, is to attach a straight grain to a bias. So I pinned it together, quick swoosh test, and we're ready to sew. I even trimmed and pressed my seams. I am so impressed. Well done, Pastor Shawley. She was on her game. And we sew again because French seams. And now I'm just pinning in the pocket piece. I've done this kind of skirt with French seam pockets like a million times. So if you want a more in-depth explanation, I will link the blog post that I usually follow down below. Oh my god, I also understitched? Dang, okay. So I went ahead and stitched the seam allowance to the pocket piece to help it roll really neatly to the inside of the pocket. Well done me. It does help, by the way, understitching. I know it's kind of a pain, but I do really like the finished look. All of the panels sewn together, I can just line up the waistband and pin it on. Oh my god, it's so satisfying to watch me press the waistband. Oh, so nice. Excellent framing as usual, but what I'm doing here is just felling the waistband to the outside of the skirt. So at this point I've only got 1 seam left where the side zipper is gonna go. So I pinned it together and basted the seam 1/2 inch in. Except this was actually a mistake. So we're not French seaming this one, but it still has the same seam allowance as all the other pieces. It should have 1 inch seam allowance because I drafted just 1 piece, right? I should have basted it at 1 inch, not 1/2 inch. It wasn't a huge deal in the end, but it did make the skirt like a tiny bit bigger in the waist than it should have been. It's not a big deal. I did just tack it in after the fact. I pinned it in upside down. Please hold, I need to flip this around. Why am I like this? So I laid the invisible zipper in the seam the correct way. Good job, Pastor Shawley. And backstitch it into place by hand. And then I finished the raw edges of this seam just by felling them down. So now I'm measuring down from the waistband to even out the hem. The seams did stretch ever so slightly as I was sewing them, but I also forgot to account for the waistband being 1 inch, so I ended up trimming about 1 inch off the bottom anyway. So then I ran a basting stitch all along the hem at 1/2 inch and then 1.5 inches, and I used them to help coax the hem into the right shape and pressed it all into place. And then the hem just gets top stitched down. And with the white skirt done, the plaid skirt came together really easily. So yeah, that was the skirts. That was super simple and easy. No fancy reveal today because I wanted to show the skirts off with the bodices that I made for the trip. I got some really cute pictures. My friend took loads of pictures for me. So that's all going to be coming in the next video, hopefully in a reasonable amount of time. Again, I'm not going to make any promises because every time I make promises I break them and I'm sorry. In the meantime, what did we learn? So drafting the skirt was actually fairly easy. I mean, it did require some basic maths, but overall I think it was very beginner friendly. I think anybody could probably follow this. I don't know if I want to label this as a tutorial because I don't tend to be very good at tutorials. My method of learning things is just kind of figure it out as you go, but if it's helpful to you, that's great. And if it's not, I'm sorry. I've still got loads of fabric left over, so I think it was a great use of the fabric. I don't think I used very much, and these are like some very swooshy skirts, so I'm quite pleased with that. I did try a new technique with the hem this go around. So I have tried to hem circle skirts in the past by just double folding them, but they always ended up really wobbly. I think my like spring dress video, that one has a really wobbly hem, and I think I talked about it then. So the gathering stitch I think was something I read about online somewhere, but I cannot remember where I got the idea. But actually I found that with the brown skirt that just pressing the hem into place was good enough and I could just skip the gathering stitches. So I pressed it in at 1/2 inch and then folded it up another inch and then pressed it again. And as long as I was very particular about lining it up properly, that was absolutely fine, and I stitched that very neatly. So what we've learned is the iron is a sewist's best friend. So the one good thing about having made these skirts months ago is that I've actually gotten to wear them loads. They were pretty much staple pieces in my wardrobe all throughout spring and summer. They are super satisfyingly swooshy. Super satisfying. Super satisfyingly swooshy. I said it right the first time. I cannot say it 5 times fast. The chaos. So they're definitely very versatile pieces, and I love having pieces that I can just mix and match with loads of things because I think they're very neutral on their own. So I like that I can pair them with loads of things. And yeah, I've been wearing them loads, which is great. It's nice making your own clothes and finding pieces that you just gravitate to. It feels nice. So I think that is probably it for this video, and hopefully I will be seeing you soon for some cottagecore bodices. I am really, really sorry for the long wait, and I hope I will be able to make videos more frequently. Again, I cannot make any promises, but I've got 2 more projects that I've already completed, and I've got the backlogged footage for that, so I will be editing those when I can, but yeah, I guess we'll see when those come out. So thank you for coming along with me on this skirt making adventure. I hope it was fun for you, it was fun for me, and I will see you next time. Bye! I feel like my hair is very like witch in the woods today. I'm trying to dry it naturally, but she's not happy. We'll figure it out. At some point I will have lovely waves.